Captain Rajiv Mehra, a seasoned Indian pilot with thousands of flight hours, was preparing for a routine flight from Sydney to Mumbai in 2025 when everything changed. Trusted by passengers and colleagues alike, he became the center of a shocking international scandal that ended with him being arrested inside the cockpit itself. The pilot had built his life around precision, routine, and trust. From his earliest days in flight school, he showed discipline that impressed instructors and classmates alike. Years later, that discipline translated into a respected career with international airlines, flying wide-body aircraft across continents. Passengers often felt reassured simply seeing him in uniform, believing their safety rested in capable hands. His logbook was filled with thousands of flight hours, clean records, and glowing evaluations. To the outside world, he was a symbol of professionalism and control. Behind that image, however, the pressures of his double life were quietly growing. Long absences from home had strained personal relationships, and financial decisions made years earlier had spiraled into serious trouble. Expensive tastes and risky investments left him chasing money he could no longer earn through a pilot's salary alone. Each successful flight masked the anxiety that followed him from hotel rooms to airport lounges. The constant movement between countries made it easier to hide problems, but it also made them worse. Australia was a familiar destination for him. He had landed there many times, passed immigration checks, and stayed in the same crew hotels without incident. This routine created a false sense of safety. What he did not realize was that his patterns had begun to stand out. Authorities noticed how his name appeared repeatedly in unrelated financial inquiries. Travel records showed timing that did not align with coincidence. Slowly, pieces began to connect. On the morning of the flight, everything appeared normal. The airport buzzed with the usual sounds of departures and arrivals. Crew members followed standard procedures, and passengers boarded without concern. The pilot moved confidently through pre-flight preparations, unaware that multiple agencies were now watching his every step. What he believed was just another routine journey was, in reality, the aircraft sat at the gate under clear skies, appearing no different from hundreds of other planes preparing to depart that day. Ground crews moved with practice speed, loading luggage and completing final checks. Inside the cockpit, systems powered on one by one, screens glowing as the pilot reviewed procedures he had followed countless times before. To anyone observing, the scene reflected order and routine. Yet beneath that calm surface, invisible signals were moving through secure channels far from the runway. In a separate part of the airport, alerts had been triggered hours earlier. Analysts reviewed flight manifests, tracking data, and intelligence reports that had been quietly updated overnight. What once seemed like scattered concerns had now reached a level that could no longer be ignored. The pilot's presence on this specific flight was not accidental. Authorities believed he might attempt to leave the country if given the chance. Allowing the aircraft to take off would mean losing a critical opportunity. Every minute leading up to departure carried tension that passengers could not sense. Families settled into seats, travelers adjusted luggage, and flight attendants prepared for safety demonstrations. The engines remained silent, waiting for clearance, while coordination unfolded behind closed doors. Aviation officials, federal police, and border authorities aligned their roles with careful precision. Safety was the top priority, and any action had to avoid panic or risk. The pilot felt a faint unease he could not explain. He checked weather updates and reviewed the flight plan again, focusing on routine to quiet his thoughts. He did not know that his movements were being monitored in real time. Cameras, access logs, and communication records were all under review. The decision had already been made. As the scheduled departure time approached, clearance was deliberately delayed. The delay seemed minor, almost normal in a busy international airport. The moment arrived without warning for those on board. While passengers remained seated and unaware, authorization moved swiftly through official channels. Airport operations paused the departure under standard protocol, masking the real reason behind the interruption. The aircraft door, already secured for flight, became the focus of quiet but decisive action. Law enforcement officers, trained for high-risk situations, approached with clear instructions and full clearance from aviation authorities. Inside the cockpit, the pilot remained focused on instruments and checklists, unaware that his routine was about to be violently disrupted. The controlled environment he trusted was no longer under his command. When officers entered, the shift in power was immediate and unmistakable. The pilot was restrained at the controls, preventing any movement that could endanger the aircraft or those on board. Every action followed a strict safety protocol designed to keep the situation contained. The cockpit, usually a symbol of authority and trust, became a scene of disbelief for those who witnessed it. Crew members were instructed to remain in place, and communication with passengers was limited to avoid panic. From the terminal windows, ground staff watched in confusion as uniformed officers surrounded the aircraft. Within minutes, the engines were shut down completely, and the flight was officially canceled. Word of the arrest spread faster than authorities could contain it. Airport staff shared fragments of what they had seen, and those fragments quickly turned into breaking news. The image of a pilot taken into custody before takeoff struck a nerve with the public. Flying was built on trust, and that trust had just been shaken in the most dramatic way possible. As the pilot was escorted off the aircraft, his career effectively ended in that instant. Years of training, discipline, and public confidence collapsed under the weight of handcuffs. Long before the aircraft was stopped at the gate, investigators have been quietly building a case that crossed borders and agencies. What began as a routine financial review overseas slowly revealed patterns that did not fit a lawful income. Money moved through accounts in small but frequent amounts, passing through multiple countries in ways designed to avoid detection. At first, the pilot's name appeared only at the edges of these records, easy to dismiss as coincidence. Over time, those coincidences became impossible to ignore. International travel data added another layer. His flight schedules aligned closely with key dates tied to ongoing criminal investigations. Cities connected to fraud and money laundering cases appeared repeatedly in his work history. While most pilots flew predictable routes, his assignments formed a web that mirrored financial transactions under scrutiny. Investigators began to suspect that his profession provided both access and cover, allowing him to move freely while attracting little attention. Australian authorities were brought in after intelligence suggested the next flight could be critical. Rather than act too early and risk losing evidence, agencies agreed to monitor and wait. Surveillance expanded to include digital activity, communication logs, and travel behavior. Each review confirmed the same conclusion. This was not a single mistake, but a long-running operation hidden behind a respected uniform. The decision to arrest him inside the cockpit was not dramatic by chance. It was strategic. Allowing him to leave Australian airspace would have complicated extradition and delayed justice. Authorities needed full control of the environment to ensure safety and preserve evidence. The aircraft, though unusual, provided that control. What the public did not see was the months of restraint shown by investigators. Every step had been weighed against the risk of exposure. The evidence began to surface rapidly once authorities secured access to the pilot's belongings and digital footprint. What initially appeared to be ordinary travel gear revealed carefully concealed items meant to avoid attention. Encrypted devices were discovered, protected by multiple layers of security far beyond what was typical for personal use. Specialists worked methodically to unlock them, knowing that time was critical. When access was finally gained, the data exposed a hidden network of contacts, locations, and transactions spread across several countries. Flight records were compared against digital timelines, and the results were disturbing. Certain routes matched perfectly with moments when large sums of money changed hands. Hotel stays aligned with meetings already under investigation in unrelated cases. Even layovers once considered routine now appeared deliberate. Each detail strengthened the theory that the pilot's time in the air had been used to move more than passengers and cargo. The sky had become a corridor for secrecy. Financial analysts traced funds moving through shell accounts and cryptocurrency wallets. The amounts were rarely large enough to trigger automatic alarms, but their consistency told a different story. The pilot's income could not explain the lifestyle indicators revealed through spending patterns. Authorities concluded that aviation access had allowed him to operate beneath standard scrutiny, protected by assumptions of trust and professionalism. More troubling was the potential risk to aviation safety. Investigators found evidence suggesting that work responsibilities and criminal activity had overlapped. While no direct sabotage was uncovered, the idea that divided focus existed inside a cockpit alarmed regulators. Reviews were ordered to determine how close the situation came to endangering lives. As fragments of evidence were confirmed, the case shifted from suspicion to certainty. News of the cockpit arrest spread like wildfire, traveling faster than any official statement could contain. Social media exploded with images of airport security, blurred glimpses of uniformed officers, and passengers capturing moments of confusion. Headlines around the world emphasized the dramatic nature of the event. A pilot, restrained at the controls, arrested before takeoff. Airlines scrambled to issue statements, trying to assure the public that passenger safety had never been in jeopardy, but the images and the story spoke for themselves. Trust in air travel, even for a brief moment, wavered under the weight of such a shocking incident. The media frenzy created its own pressure on investigators. While authorities remained tight-lipped to protect ongoing operations, speculation filled the gaps. Analysts on television suggested motives ranging from financial crimes to espionage, while social media users debated scenarios both plausible and sensational. Conspiracy theories flourished, fueled by the scarcity of confirmed information. The pilot's reputation, built over years of international service, crumbled overnight. To the public, the man who had once been a symbol of skill and reliability suddenly became the face of betrayal and suspicion. Airlines and aviation regulators faced scrutiny as well. Questions arose about background checks, monitoring systems, and whether signs of misconduct had been missed. Internal reviews began to determine how closely flight crews should be monitored and what protocols could prevent a recurrence. The arrest, though successful, exposed vulnerabilities that had been previously overlooked in the trust-based culture of aviation. Meanwhile, the accused remained silent, cooperating only minimally through legal representation. Courts issued partial gag orders to prevent sensitive information from leaking, deepening the sense of mystery surrounding the case. Every unanswered question amplified public fascination, turning a single. When the pilot finally faced the courtroom, the world watched closely, eager for answers to a story that had captured international attention. The proceedings revealed fragments of a complex and carefully hidden operation, one that had spanned years and crossed multiple borders. Prosecutors outlined evidence connecting him to organized financial schemes, showing that his flights and personal movements were not just a matter of routine travel, but part of a larger plan. Investigators detailed how his schedule matched the timing of suspicious transactions, highlighting the unusual alignment between aviation duties and criminal activity. The courtroom became a stage where the intersection of law, aviation, and international cooperation played out in meticulous detail. Each piece of evidence told a story of planning, deception, and calculated risk. Financial experts traced the flow of money through offshore accounts and shell companies, demonstrating how seemingly small transfers added up to a massive network of illicit activity. Digital forensic specialists explained how encrypted devices had concealed communications and records, revealing an intricate web of contacts and operations. The complexity of the case emphasized that this was not a spontaneous act, but long-term exploitation of trust and mobility. Defense teams challenged the evidence, questioning jurisdiction and the methods used to secure digital and financial records. They argued procedural technicalities, seeking to limit the scope of the investigation, but prosecutors countered with documentation from multiple agencies and international partners. Each hearing revealed new connections and details, exposing the depth of planning behind the pilot's hidden life. As hearings continued, the implications became clearer. Aviation authorities began to reassess security protocols, while international law enforcement agencies highlighted the importance of coordination across borders. The case concluded with a mixture of relief and unease. The pilot, once a figure of trust in international aviation, had been exposed as someone who manipulated his position for personal gain. Courts handed down sentences reflecting the gravity of the crimes, and authorities emphasized that the arrest prevented potentially larger consequences. The aircraft that never took off became a symbol not of failure, but of prevention, a reminder that vigilance and coordination could stop danger before it escalated. Aviation regulators immediately began implementing stricter oversight, reviewing crew histories, and enhancing monitoring systems to prevent similar incidents from occurring in the future. Airlines and passengers alike learned a difficult lesson about trust. While pilots are trained professionals entrusted with immense responsibility, the case showed that even trusted figures could exploit their position. Policies that once relied heavily on reputation were reevaluated, with background checks and continuous monitoring becoming stricter and more thorough. Crew training programs incorporated lessons from the incident, emphasizing not only operational safety, but also awareness of potential vulnerabilities within aviation systems. The story also highlighted the importance of international cooperation. Authorities from multiple countries had coordinated for months to track, investigate, and ultimately arrest the pilot without endangering lives. The meticulous planning and timing showcased how law enforcement could act decisively when intelligence and strategy aligned. The operation became a benchmark for handling complex cross-border investigations, showing that patience and precision could yield results even in high-stakes scenarios.